There are a lot of reasons not to elect me.
Ron Paul! What can I say? Ron Paul.
A candidate whose message of sound money, free markets, personal freedom, and a non-interventionist foreign policy has inspired a generation of rabble-rousing libertarians, of which your host is one, to rage against the machine. To rage against the machine. To rage against the machine.
Mitt Romney may be the Republican Party's presumptive nominee, but Ron Paul's zealous supporters, despite threats from the RNC, are planning a state convention coup. You can stand them up at the gates of hell, but they won't back down.
You say you want a revolution, well, you know, we all want to change the world.
But Ron Paul will be on hand to greet the throngs of Paul supporters expected to attempt to hijack the convention. Despite threats from the Republican National Committee not to seat Nevada's delegates in Tampa at the national convention should Paul prevail, the Paulites will not let their delegates go. Joining me to discuss all of this, Paul supporter and one-time congressional candidate Carl Bunce, who's the boss of the Paul campaign in Nevada, and Romney, Nevada co-chair and lieutenant governor of the state of Nevada, Brian Krolicki. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hello, John. Thanks, John.
All right, Mr. Bunce, this is a very simple question. Ron Paul finished third, a disappointing third. You and I have talked about this. Almost 3-to-1 loser to Mitt Romney, and yet still, you will not agree to that kind of a portion of the delegates. Why not?
Well, there's no agreement to be made. We're a caucus state. What the process we're currently going through is a caucus. It takes delegates from the precinct to the county to the state. We worked as a campaign to educate delegates and voters on that process, and that it's coming to fruition tomorrow at the state convention. The delegates that show up at a convention set the tempo for the convention. If we happen to have a large percentage of delegates that support Congressman Paul for president, they will want to have their voice heard. It's just how a caucus state works. It's how conventions work. It's just how the game's played.
But you're, okay, this, the game's played, you're talking about process. What I'm asking is most people who live in the real world, not in the world we're talking about now, say a guy lost by a 3-to-1 margin, he should have that number of delegates. Why doesn't that make sense?
I don't know. Why would a campaign only play in the first inning of the game? They had an opportunity to identify their delegates, turn them out for the process so they could finish the game strongly. The Romney campaign in Nevada kind of closed up shop after the caucus, didn't identify their delegates, and have not turned them out to the convention. And is that our fault that our delegates are in a higher apportionment than theirs?
So what Mr. Bunce is saying is true by the letter of the rules. They're not doing it. They're not violating the rules. They're playing by the rules that were set up. Did you close up shop? What were you doing?
Absolutely not. We've been doing the things that we need to do, but from our standpoint, the discussion of the caucus here in Nevada, it's done. It was concluded, and as you said, it was almost a 3-to-1 margin. Dr. Paul has brought a lot of energy and enthusiastic supporters. We need that. This is about November. This isn't just about a presidential race, which, again, I think in large measure has been decided. It's about the other federal races here in Nevada. It's about the legislature. And I think those are things that we can agree on all day.
Do you want to pat Mr. Bunce on the head, too, with that tone that you're taking toward these Ron Paul supporters?
We're all in this together.
Do you want to pat Mr. Bunce on the head, too, with that tone that you're taking toward these Ron Paul supporters?
We have to look at a little bit of history here, though, Brian and John. In 2008, you were national delegate, correct? Mm-hmm. I was a national delegate. You know the difference between us in 2008?
What's the difference?
I was elected, he was appointed. We had the leadership from the Nevada State Party close down the convention, just appoint a slate of delegates because they wanted to stomp on what the grassroots was trying to achieve by supporting Congressman Paul. This time, in 2012, now we have, since we've worked hard for 4.5 years and taken over the leadership of the Republican Party, now the next level is coming down on us. The RNC is going to put a boot on our neck.
Oh, I'm going to talk about that in just a second, but you brought up a very interesting point there. People don't know the history. The 2008 convention had to be shut down because there was such fear among the establishment that all you Ron Paul people were going to get to go to the national convention. But you said what we wanted to achieve. That's what I don't get, sir. Tell me, what are you trying to achieve here? So, Mitt Romney is going to be the nominee. Do you know that?
So, what's he scared of? What's he scared of? A little competition.
What are you trying to achieve is what I'm asking you.
We're trying to influence the party. What we've done here in Nevada is influence the party. We've influxed a bunch of new voters, young voters, different people with different mindsets into the state party here. The party has grown within Clark County, within other counties. We were trying to grow the party, but it seems that every step of the way we try to do, there's always some kind of roadblock or dam put up. We don't want your type, we don't want your type. That causes us, it actually motivates us.
Let him jump in. You don't want his type, do you? Well, I don't know what type Mr. Bunce is, but you don't want his type, do you?
I want people who believe in the Republican cause and who can help us energize the party and get out the vote, register voters, show up in November, so we have a great ticket up and down. Really, I mean,
that's what I've done for the state
you've never heard me say that, nor would
yeah.
I, because I welcome that energy. And I hope what we can do tomorrow is channel that energy, regardless of who our leadership is, and the delegates going to Tampa, which is
registration for Nevada's Republican Convention just wrapped up about an hour ago here at John Squaga's Nugget and Sparks. You could say that people are waiting with bated breath for tomorrow when delegate voting begins. There's some major concerns surrounding tomorrow's event because at the convention in 2008, Ron Paul's supporters basically took over the event, forcing organizers to shut it down before delegates were even chosen. Here's a look back at 2008, what exactly happened, and what some political analysts are predicting for this year. The state convention is where Nevada's delegates for the Republican National Convention are elected. But many Republicans are concerned about what could happen this weekend after the chaotic convention in 2008.
The people who are running the convention, maybe we'll call them the Republican establishment. That's what Ron Paul calls them. So it's Ron Paul versus the establishment. They didn't really realize how organized Ron Paul's followers were.
News 4 political host Anjanette Damon was at the 2008 convention when Ron Paul's supporters basically took over. They were able to get a majority and force a rule change that would allow the convention to select its own delegates, giving them the opportunity to get more Ron Paul supporters at the national convention. But ultimately, time ran out, and the convention was called off before any delegates were elected.
And that just kind of threw everything into chaos. The Ron Paul people didn't know what to do. Some new leaders tried to pop up. You had the convention chairman, Bob Beers, at that time surrounded by security, escorted out of the building. It turned into really quite a show.
And perhaps a fear of deja vu led the RNC's lawyer to write a letter to Nevada Republicans, suggesting Nevada's 28 delegates to the national convention could be jeopardized if Ron Paul supporters take slots that should go to Romney since he won the caucus. But Carl Bunce, Ron Paul's campaign chairman, says it's just a veiled threat.
If they want to squash out any form of dissent or activism in the party, they're signing their own death warrant for the party, basically.
Ron Paul will be speaking here tomorrow, and I'll be covering it all day long and bring you the latest tomorrow on News 4 at 5. Reporting live from Nevada's Republican Convention in Sparks, I'm Dora Scheidell, News 4.
With the chairs of the two main campaigns, the only campaigns left, Ron Paul and Mitt Romney, although you don't really think the Ron Paul campaign is still around, do you?
I think they have some marvelous people who've put a lot of energy into it and will affect the platform and who the delegates are. But again, I think Mitt Romney's a nominee, and I'm happy to wager a dinner on that one, Carl.
Do you want to pat Mr. Bunce on the head, too, with that tone that you're taking toward these Ron Paul supporters?
You know, today was the Nevada State Republican Convention. It was full of action and excitement. News 4's Dora Scheidell has been at John Squaga's Nugget all day long, where the convention is still going on. Dora, what's happening down there?
Hi, Brian. I'm here in front of John Squaga's Nugget and Sparks, where Nevada's Republican Convention is underway as we speak. You could say the fear of a contentious convention came true, despite pleas from Republican leaders early on asking everyone to play nice and follow the rules. The first conflict happened when a woman from Clark County stood up and claimed that the Romney camp was actually passing out fake Ron Paul slates. Here's a look at the real Ron Paul slate. You can tell that it's real because it's printed on both sides. The fake one was only printed on one side. It also actually misspelled the name of Ron Paul's campaign manager, Carl Bunce. The second conflict happened when Ron Paul supporters realized that the rules weren't being upheld, and more than 400 delegates were actually allowed to register after the 9 a.m. deadline. And luckily, after the lunch break, Republican leaders came back and actually admitted that they had miscounted the preliminary delegation count, and that sort of solved the problem in that case. But probably the highlight for everyone, at least for Ron Paul supporters, was when Ron Paul came to the podium. He was greeted with a standing ovation and then delivered about a 15-minute speech touting his platforms. Here's what he had to say about maintaining the status quo.
Status quo has been, no matter whom we elect, it's seems to stay the same. The wars stay the same. The Federal Reserve stay the same. They want people to challenge this, challenge the status quo, challenge the bailout, and challenge the Federal Reserve System as well.
I'm joined now by News 4 political host John Ralston to get his take. John, what do you think about the convention thus far?
Well, it's pretty much what we expected. The Ron Paul folks tried to assert themselves. They hope to have 2/3 of the delegates, but as you mentioned, when those 400 additional delegates were allowed in, they only probably have a slight edge, if any edge at all. We're going to find out just what kind of edge they have. The real balloting that matters is going on now. Right now they're voting for the Republican National Committee man and committeewoman, and soon the national delegate slates. All across the country, the Ron Paul folks are trying to stack delegate slates where they can. For what reason, to what end, it's hard to tell, because Mitt Romney is still the presumptive nominee.
Reporting live from Nevada's Republican Convention, I'm Dora Scheidell.
The RNC's written actually 2 letters in the last week that have essentially said the same thing. But let me read from the latest one from the Council of the RNC. I believe it is highly likely that any committee with jurisdiction over the matter would find improper any change to the election, selection, allocation, or binding of delegates, thus jeopardizing the seating of Nevada's entire delegation to the National Convention. So, to go back to what Mr. Bunce asked you, what are you guys afraid of? Because the Republican National Committee is essentially the Romney campaign now. You don't have to try to deny that. We all know that. So what are you guys afraid of? You're afraid that a bunch of rogue Paul people are going to go to Tampa and not vote for Mitt Romney on the first ballot. That's what you're afraid of.
I'm not afraid of that.
Tell me why.
Romney does not have 1144. He does not have it. I don't think he'll have it when we get to the RNC.
Come on, you don't think he'll have 1144 when they get to Tampa?
Late August, when you start seeing Obama and Romney campaigning against each other, they sound alike. They talk alike. I don't see any difference from an Obama administration to Romney administration myself.
Dip in and get you some glasses. They appear completely different. It's night and day. And
individuals will be required to carry basic health insurance, just as most states require you to carry auto insurance.
And if it means we have to go into a mosque to wiretap or a church, then that's exactly where we're going to go. And I hear from time to time people say, hey, wait a second, we have civil liberties we have to worry about.
Romney, as president, would you have signed the National Defense Act as written?
Yes, I would have, and I do believe that it's appropriate. And I think it's important to have the Fed as an independent agency.
I don't think it's good policy for the president or a president-elect to second-guess the Fed, which is an independent body.
Mitt Romney is obviously the choice of the Republican establishment. Those are the folks who brought us TARP and stimulus, wars fought on credit cards, federal agents writing their own search warrants, and the federal government taking over education. Mitt Romney believes in all these things, but here's the crusher. So does President Obama. There's not a dime's worth of difference between them. Name the topic on which the president has a real say, and they agree. Can the government mandate health care? Yes, from both. Should income taxes stay where they are on those who pay the most? Yes, from both. Can the president start a war on his own without a declaration of war from the Congress? Yes, from both. Can the president kill any American he wants? Incredibly, yes, from both. Oh, there is some difference in tone. One of them likes labor unions, and the other one likes big business. But both love big government.
Very simply, the answer is send only people to Washington, send only people to the White House that know and understand and read the Constitution and enforce the Constitution.
Thank God for the truth.
And I'll get on my knees and pray. We don't get fooled again. Don't get fooled again. No.
When this revolution is successful, it will not be a Republican monopoly at all. It will be bipartisan. It will be endorsed by all the American people.
Thank God for the truth.
Ron Paul. What can I say? Ron Paul.
There you go again.